I know a lot of people don't put a lot of stock into the competitions, but I do think that as a new screenwriter or someone who's finding your way and finding your process, if you can afford to enter them, it's invaluable, because what will happen is you will get reader feedback on some of them and you can start tracking your progress. So for me, I did my first draft and I believe it was a semi-finalist in the Screencraft Fellowship. And then from there I was like, okay, well it's not terrible, it's okay. So I started to work on it more and I tweaked it and I would enter it in different competitions. And it became, a second rounder at Austin Film Festival. It became a top 15% Nichols finalist. So all of these different iterations, and I would take the feedback and I would incorporate it into the script. That's not to say that I would change my vision or my storyline or the characters, but the readers really do take a lot of time to put in good, valuable notes, especially in those top competitions like AFF, Nichols, and Screencraft too. But I took the notes and I would incorporate it. And, it's very easy to get discouraged and disagree with somebody when they try to give you notes. And that, I think, stunts you as a writer. You have to be open. You have to know when to not compromise your vision, but you also have to know when to be open to taking feedback. So I allowed myself to do that process and, fail for 3 years with this one story. I was kind of, mucking about with other ideas too, but eventually, I got notification that Baltimore was one of the top 3 finalists for the UCLA screenwriting competition in the fall of 2018. No, I'm sorry, the fall of 2017. Fall of 2017. And I was absolutely stunned. And then the announcement went out that it won. And from there, I had been chatting with a friend of mine about another project I was working on, and my phone literally started to blow up because I'm not kidding. The news that I had won the contest had been released by UCLA, and they sent it out to production companies, they sent it out to agencies, they sent it out to development execs, and that news had gone out while I was chatting with my friend who happens to now be my manager. I didn't know he was managing clients at the time because he was a producer. But I'm starting to get all of these emails from, William Morris and CAA, and they're like, congratulations, we'd love to chat with you. And I'm like, oh my God,
wow.
What do I do? And he's like, what is this? What happened? And I told him, and he goes, we need to meet. We need to talk. So we did, and I signed with him, and he helped me to organize those meetings and make sure that I spoke with the right people, and that got me signed with my reps today.
Do you always submit the screenplays that you write to screenplay contests?
Not always, but I am a little more positive about those contests than others. The first agent I had, a lot of years ago, I met him because I had won a contest while I was still a grad student, and it was through what's called the Sloan Foundation, and they had a few different events which eventually connected me with the Hamptons Film Festival. And so then I met an agent there, and mind you, it was all like a half year later, finally, after talking a lot and sharing one of the scripts I'd worked on with a co-writer, he eventually said, okay, yeah, I think I could represent this. But it was a lot of dancing before we got there, I bring that up just to say, it helped me. It doesn't help everyone. There are contests out there that I always say, just do your homework on them, because if you've never heard of it, that doesn't mean it's terrible, or it means maybe it is. So do a bit of homework on whatever contest you enter. Even if it's only, a $30 entry fee, you don't want to just throw good money after bad. So that all being said, the contests, yeah, they're hard, but it's hard breaking in as a creative. So in essence, it's already kind of complicated. So what I think it can help with is it can help you maybe break a little bit away from the clutter. And so for even my own experience, the reason I was able to meet this agent was because I had a script that at least some people liked, and one of whom said, oh, you should meet Eric and whatever. And so just that alone didn't mean I was going to get signed like that or win, fortune and glory or any of that, but it at least helped me meet someone I might not have met otherwise. I know people who haven't, won contests but were quarterfinalists, semifinalists. That alone was something that helped them meet execs, meet agents, managers. Because the idea that someone says, of the million screenplays out here, this one's pretty okay, that sometimes can be enough to start a communication. So I don't have that cynicism. That I think I understand the cynicism of it and the hesitation. I'm working on a pilot with a partner, and she's a little bit more hesitant to sort of put it out to the contest market because it's also based on her family. And so for that, it's like, okay, I'm not going to push because it makes sense. Everyone's got their own comfort level with these things. I do think if you're new and you're starting off, again, you do a little bit of research, it can actually be quite helpful potentially. It's a long shot. Life's a long shot, I guess, so it's okay. And you get used to the word no a lot in this town. So I don't know, what's another no? But that idea of when you see you've made some kind of cut, meaning you're a quarterfinalist or something, it can actually be good. And occasionally, yeah, you need those little victories. I had a short script that was a quarterfinalist. I don't remember the name of the contest. But just seeing my name on that list, I was like, oh, okay. I guess I'm not kidding myself too bad. So it can help. But the idea that it can help you separate from the pack, that alone might be worth the risk.
And especially too, if you're not in this town, you said we hear
Oh,
no
yeah,
a lot,
yeah.
then it might be another sort of foray into the business.
Sure. A guy I'm friendly with who lives in New York came out for, I think it was the Big Break contest they do through Final Draft. And so it's kind of awesome. He got brought out here. I got flown out to New York for a film festival. It was, of all things, the Howard Stern Film Festival.
Oh, great.
I was a finalist for that. And I joke that I think most of the entrants, I can't even imagine what those films were. Mine at least was coherent.
Okay.
Inappropriate, but coherent. And it was great. I mean, I think those are experiences. In film festivals, similar thing. You always just got to make sure it's worth it. But I'm part of the Burbank Film Festival board, and I mean, I could tell you, all these filmmakers meeting each other, connecting, it's fabulous because you kind of need that village to do it out here. Unless you're, I don't know, Robert Rodriguez, who does every single job, including, I think, parking the cars and cooking the food. He does everything on his films. But more times than not, yeah, you're going to need some collaborators because that's how it works. So that's how you might find your village, especially if you're not in the village of Los Angeles.
Are there certain genres or story types that work best for screenwriting contests?
Fortunately, there's a lot of contests that, there's a number of people I know do horror, but there's a lot of horror contests. So I don't know if there's necessarily one genre that is better than others. I think, dramas have their own sort of unique pull. What sometimes can be tough is if you have a low concept drama. When I say low concept, it doesn't mean lesser concept. It means one sentence maybe doesn't do the whole story justice. So someone has to really read the script, not just hear the pitch. But I feel like there's just enough contest festivals. I mean, even the festival, I'm part of Burbank's International Film Festival. There's blocks of films horror and adventure, action, comedy, first-time filmmakers, high school, female filmmakers. So I think you find there's a sort of a good breadth of possibilities. So I don't think there's necessarily one type that's the express lane. I think you find if you write a good story, I mean, that can transcend genre. I mean, even The Substance just got nominated for an Academy Award for Best Picture and Best Director, and that's basically a horror film. Body horror is the subgenre they used to describe it, and yet it really played, it connected to people. And as a result, it's up there with movies like The Brutalist and Wicked, which are completely different genres than that one.
Nosferatu.
Right? Yeah, that guy, that thing's making Nosferatu is making $100 million. That movie came out on Christmas Day. Christmas Day, Nosferatu, vampire movie. But people were compelled by the story and of course, the style.
Right,
and
Robert
so I think it found its audience.
This was the year that I decided to, finally submit to contests. I know I did some for like TSL, the Script Lab. There are some other competitions, but Nickel is the one that, I pretty much focused on. I think the one that everyone focuses on. So, but yeah, I've only submitted to a few, and I've only submitted 2 screenplays to contests.
Did you get feedback?
I did. I got feedback from Nichols. They told me that my script, Potter's Field, placed in the top 15% of all entries, but it still fell short of advancing to I think it was the quarterfinals, semifinals or quarterfinals. I always get them mixed up, but it fell short of advancing. But they did, mention its placement, and so that made me feel pretty good. With some of the other contests, I've gotten feedback about like the script itself, just noting what the strengths were. A lot of times dialogue, characters were cited as strengths. So that, made me feel good, but also, alerted me to what I perhaps need to work on. Perhaps I need to work on story a little more, making it bigger. I think that's something that is looked for as a big idea. So that's something that I think I need to work on, that the contest the feedback from the contest let me know.
So you think it was worth the submission fee to get this feedback?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Because I didn't enter the contest, honestly, with the belief that, I'm going to win the grand prize and, all that comes with that. It was mostly for the feedback.
How have these contests helped improve your writing?
I would say the feedback that I've gotten from the contest have, helped me because I can, take a look at, what I need to work on. But I mean, that's pretty much it. I'm not a big fan of screenwriting contests, mostly because I feel there are only so many that can really help a screenwriter. Nickel is one of them. I believe there's an Austin, like the Austin Film Festival screenplay competition, and I think Page and maybe Final Draft, right? But there's so many contests now. Like, that's what's crazy to me. Every day on Twitter, you see people tweet, waiting on results from this contest, from this competition. And you see like the people, and they should be proud of themselves for advancing. They're tweeting out, my script, advanced. This is great. Congratulations to all of the semifinalists, quarterfinalists. And I think that's great because it's validation. It lets you know that you are doing something right. But as far as what it can do for a person's career, what a contest placement can do for a person's career, I haven't really seen that. So I don't know that contests are beneficial in that respect.
Do you know how many screenplays are submitted each year to Nickel Fellowship?
I know the year that I won, it was over 8,000. Yeah.
Wow, okay.
And I think that now they only allow you to submit one. Before you could submit multiple scripts, you could submit a few, and now you have to pick one. So I think that will be, for the foreseeable future, the biggest, the most submissions that they ever had. It would creep up a little every year, but that was an 8,000 something, 8,300, something like that.
And what happened the first time you submitted?
First time I submitted, I just was rejected, and then maybe somewhere down the line, I made quarterfinalist and semifinalist with a script, that kind of thing, yeah.
How many times have you submitted a screenplay to the Nickel Fellowship?
I'm sure I'm sure 10 times, or more. And I'd submitted a few. And yeah, it was something a friend of mine told me really early at USC that I should try and go for. So I started then when I had one script, and I'd submit different ones over the years and made semifinalists a few times with different scripts. And the script that won, which was the feature version of the Shelter short film, it made top 50 one year. And so I felt like it was really close, and I actually did all this rewriting and all this other stuff on it in between, and then submitted again, randomly one year. I didn't submit every year, but submitted one year, and it didn't get really anywhere. And then during COVID, I just rewrote everything. I had time, and so I went back and I looked at that script, and sometimes scripts get kind of they get mangled in the process of trying to get made. I'd been trying to get that film produced and working with a producer, and wasn't any fault of hers, but just based on resources, based on people we needed to appease, or ways that it had to go. The script just sort of lost. It got into this in-between state where it wasn't something that I felt confident in anymore. And so during COVID, I went back and rewrote. Looked at the old draft before I'd made all these changes and adjustments, and when I read the old draft and the old ending, I thought, okay, I was so wrong to ever change it, and that had been a realization of like, okay, I had something good, and I went away from that trying to make it better, and so I kind of put it back together and did some rewriting and submitted it, and felt like, if it can just kind of get the same kind of reader as got the first time that it made the top 50, then maybe it could go the rest of the way.
Well, that was one of the questions that we actually kind of glossed over, and I'm wondering if it applies to this, creating a commercial story versus a meaningful story. I don't know if that applies to this, but you said yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was an aspect of that. It was the appeasement of kind of people in the system, kind of in the shelter system, and we needed to work with them. And I talked to so many great people working in the system, but part of the film is about a few that aren't, and so that was always challenging to find that balance, to kind of say, well, these characters over here we can see how morally upstanding they are, and it's just these others over here that are a bit more cynical, right? But yeah, in terms of commercial potential too, that was something with that script that did change in the end. It was, honestly, actually, I think it was kind of the opposite. I think because it was an indie movie, we actually pushed it a little bit more into a bittersweet. It's always a pretty bittersweet movie, but we pushed it even more that way. But it just wasn't as earned, It didn't feel as earned as the ending we had, which actually was a little bit more uplifting. And I guess that's really the question in terms of going for commercial versus, I forget how you put it, but artistic integrity or just whatever you want to call it, is I think it just always has to feel earned. It has to feel like it's not just tacked on at the end to try and get you that last mile to the happy ending when maybe there shouldn't be one.
What was your reaction to the result of the semifinalist and then beyond?
Honestly, once it was semifinalist, I was feeling, really good, and I thought, okay, but then at that point, you don't expect to go further, really. You kind of think, this is probably as far as I'm going to go, because it drops from, I think, 150 to 10, so it's a pretty steep cutoff, and you've already kind of gone so far, and everyone you're competing against has a really great script at that point. So in a way, it's great to make semifinals, but you also think, okay, there's probably not another positive email coming. Like, this is probably the end of the realistic hope or goal with it. It's to kind of get that mile marker that you made it that far.
Are there certain genres that do better than others with the nickel?
Definitely. I mean, the nickel, when you think of it, it's from the Academy, right? And so those are the kinds of movies, like the kinds of movies that would win the best picture Oscar are like the types, Like they definitely like things, things that are prestige, like prestige dramas, or deal with a real person, a biography, or feels inspired by real life. There are all different kinds of genres, but they tend to highlight those the most. And I think other festivals or competitions don't. I mean, the Shelter script never did well anywhere else, whereas other scripts of mine would do better outside of the Nickel. So I think it's everyone's taste.
How much scrutiny would you put your screenplays through before you submitted them to the Nickel?
I mean, generally I put them through really intense scrutiny. And so it would kind of depend probably on how much work I had to do leading up to it. But, with all of these scripts, I would have, I would write them, I would go back, really think about the structure, really try and figure out a way to make the structure feel good after I've kind of had the experience of writing from instinct, or whatever you want to call it, like kind of following the character journey. But I'd have a lot of trusted friends read, give notes, and just see like how are we hitting everywhere we need to be hitting is what I'm hoping coming through.
Can you take us through the days of finding out that Shelter Animal was named semi-finalist and then later finalist with Nickel Fellowship?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the finalist was the big one, And so after I found out I was a semi-finalist, I was hoping, waiting, is there going to be something else? At that point, that there's probably some sort of process, or they were going to want to talk to you or something like that. And so I got an email maybe a couple weeks after the semifinals announcement, that said, we have some questions, or we have some things we want to just find out a little more about you, that kind of thing. And I didn't know how many people were getting this, but I knew that I had gotten nothing like this before, even making top 50. So I figured, okay, so I'm somewhere between 50 and 10, right, for the award. And so, you're writing like a little bio and maybe goals and some things like that, a resume. It was relatively simple stuff. And then I had to get on a Zoom, with a committee. And I was thinking, okay, so at this point, they'll probably ask me more questions, and they'll probably figure out, is this someone we would want to make a finalist or not, that kind of thing. And then when I got on, they basically said, you're a finalist. So that was awesome. And I was really surprised. And I knew that being a finalist, 10, there's 5 winners, and then there's 5 other finalists. So at that point, it really felt like, okay, this is something at least I can hopefully use to try. And I didn't have representation at the time. I'd been dropped by my agent years before, and I'd left my manager just because we just had different opinions about things, just different directions. And so I had struggled to find another manager, which I didn't expect. And I was thinking, at least if I'm finalist, someone will hopefully be interested. Yeah.
And that was my next question, was there sort of this talk of, okay, now that you've won, you need to do A, B, and C, and this will really take you even further? And was that true? Did those things work?
Yeah, I mean, after winning, we got a lot of that. I mean, we had like a week of, because it was COVID, it had to all be via Zoom, but, talking with past winners, kind of coaching on the best way to try and put yourself forward, just a lot of advice. And in the finalist stage, there was like an announcement, and then there were still agents and managers starting to, at that point, come in. And, all of these things are always really about what you do with them. I mean, that's really kind of the thing that I think a lot of people don't know is it's a great platform, but you still sort of need to take those steps.
What are some do's and don'ts screenwriters should be aware of before they submit?
I mean, I think definitely for writers, I would say it's true of any writers, but especially, when you have something like a deadline for the Nickel or something like that. I guess just to me, like big writing do's is write something that you care about, write something that makes you excited, it gets you interested, and makes you want to find the best version of it, and keep rewriting it, and keep researching if research matters, whatever it is, just keep exploring. And to me, the don't is, like a big don't is, I guess you want to like do think about structure and do think about how it moves, you know, and how it progresses. But I think don't try and reverse engineer everything about your script from a place of, I have to hit these mile markers, you know, as we go, because I think that really limits a writer in terms of where they could land, like what they could achieve, what they could create, if they kind of let the you know, the concept or the characters or whatever propel them forward and make them want to see what's going to happen and what could happen, and find kind of the extent and limits and boundaries of a story. And I think also when people kind of do that reverse engineer thing of, okay, I have to hit this low point at this moment and this midpoint at this moment, a lot of times there's a lot of spinning wheels, I feel like, of trying to get there, of like setting something up and, okay, it needs to last for 10, 15 pages, and then this new thing is going to occur, this new story point is going to occur. And I kind of think we see a lot of that today, where movies feel reverse engineered and kind of overstructured, and that they're perfectly done but sort of dead because there are not any surprises or anything happening in them. And yeah, I kind of think so I guess it kind of comes down to the same thing, which is, I think the best thing you can do is to give yourself permission to explore and not try and have this kind of cut and dry outline immediately going into a project before you're writing. You know, give yourself that space to play around and have fun in the world.
Why is it a bad idea to submit to screenwriting contests?
I think that you need to have a plan. So it's a bad idea when you don't plan it out. I think that contests can be great, and they can be a great way to jumpstart your career, because granted, it's hard to get a script out there, right? You can be querying and you can be networking. You should be doing all of those things. But when it's a bad idea when you haven't polished your script enough, when you don't have a plan of action, when you're just targeting really random competitions and don't have a plan of action. So contests obviously are not a cheap thing, right? It's a lot of submissions, that's a lot of extra money. So you need that plan of action. You need to know if your script will do well in a certain competition. You need to do your research. Some people just send out their scripts without realizing that certain competitions are really more awarding scripts that are dramatic and not horror, you know? So you need to have a plan of action. If you're writing a very niche type of script, research the contests where that script would do well. And I think that they can do wonders for your career, but you also need to continue working on it. So like, let's say if you submit to a festival, then you should try to attend the festival and network and meet other people, meet other writers, actually do the job. I think that a lot of times writers just write and stay in their own sheltered space, hoping things will happen to them. And just like in stories and the protagonists of the stories, you should take action and not just wait for things to happen to you, because that's not how writing works. You should be out there, you should be networking, you should be attending festivals, submitting to competitions, querying agents and managers, and doing all of the things and taking it as a job. I think that a lot of writers forget that it is a business. You know, you need to treat it as a business if you actually want a career in writing. And because of that, you should be, you know, working on all of your marketing materials for your script and not just have your script. Nowadays, so much more is expected from you as a writer than just your script. If you're writing a TV show, you're expected to have a show Bible and a pitch deck. You're expected to have a log line. You're expected to have a selling synopsis, elevator pitch, a 5-minute pitch, all of these materials that you should already have ready when you submit to a competition or query someone, because nobody will wait for you to go write them once they show interest. So let's say you send a query, to a manager or an agent, and they write back. Sometimes you send 100 queries and you only hear from 3 people, and that's actually a great number. But if you hear back and someone shows interest in your script, you should have all of these things ready, because they're not going to wait, 4 months for you to go write a show Bible or a pitch deck. You need to show that you've done your work, and also hopefully have more scripts in your portfolio, because nobody obviously wants to work with a one-hit wonder. So once you're starting to market yourself as a writer that people want to work with, one of the things is having all of these things ready so people know that they can trust you, that you're someone who's invested in this as a business, has all of these marketing materials, has more scripts under their belt, and is seeing this as a business, as a path, as not as a career.
Do you think it's detrimental sometimes almost to win a contest and then rest too much on, no pun intended, the laurels of that, because now you think, okay, now I don't have to do any work.
Oh yeah, no,
I've won this.
That's the worst thing a writer can do, definitely. A competition is a stepping stone, but it's not a guaranteed career. If you win a contest, then great, but that means get to work, contact people, query people, put that you won the Nichols, the Austin, put that in the query, reach out to people, reach out to the people from the festival, attend the meetings, attend the networking events, keep working, keep writing. Maybe that script, was your calling card, but you should have others under your belt. Maybe that made you kind of quote unquote famous for writing, dramedies. Have other dramedies, because they're going to expect you to have something kind of like in that area, so you can show.
And then for the screenwriter who's been rejected from all of them, what should their game plan be? Maybe go back to the drawing board, maybe they're not ready for a contest, or,
I always say that if you're starting your writing journey, you should try to submit to the smaller festivals that offer feedback. A lot of them offer free feedback. And when you're starting, every penny counts in that sense, and you're just starting, to hone your skills and perfect your script. So I think that those are great kind of like stepping stones so you can work on your script. And then once it's polished and maybe starting to do well in the smaller ones, then you can submit to the bigger competitions. Granted, if you've been submitting to the Nichols year after year and the script is just not advancing, then stop submitting that script there. Perhaps submit a different one, and that script either might not be good for that competition or might just not be what people are looking for at the time. Maybe you can go back to the drawing board. Maybe you can put it aside for a little bit, work on something else, and then my inspiration might come to continue working on it. But again, you shouldn't just keep targeting the one script for 10 years, because then you're not producing anything else, right? You might write 20 scripts and only one gets sold, but you need to keep writing if you want to achieve something. Also because that is the way you're honing your skills, right? The more you write, the better you get at it, and the more chances you get to actually have a career in writing.
A lady in my writing group, she's having a lot of success right now. She just was the Nicholl Fellow, and she, maybe 6 months, 8 months ago, she was getting feedback on the same script that was really really bumming her out. And it just shows you that everybody's got an opinion. It might not be the right opinion, It's the same script that they were so down on, and so many people love it. So I think it's just remembering being true to yourself and being true to your script,
That's a great example.
Yeah. I feel like there's so many of those, where somebody will get feedback and discourage them, and then it'll slow their whole writing process down. But I think it's I think it's when you start sharing your stuff with the world, you got to be prepared for people not to like it. You got to be prepared for bad reviews. They don't feel good. So I think and sometimes it's maybe I block that out or don't even read them. When it comes to negative reviews and stuff like that, because for me personally, I'm just speaking on my behalf. It's that might throw off my creative flow. So you kind of got to get with screenwriting. I think you kind of got to get a little tunnel vision on your script, and you got to see it through to the end. And then after that, maybe get feedback then.